Today we are covering Chapter 4 in Dr. Bradley's Husband Coached Childbirth book. And if you have not seen Chapters 1 through 3, go ahead down below and click to watch the first 3 chapters. We are going to do a summary/review. Now, Chapter 4 is called Where Do Fathers Fit In? This chapter is not going to be really specific to pregnancy, postpartum, or your delivery experience, but this chapter is really important because it gives you an idea of how Dr. Bradley did his research and came to the conclusion of how fathers fit in. So it gives you a little bit of respect and just excitement over him that he figured it out. If you haven't met me before, my name's Tabitha. I'm a pre- and postnatal corrective exercise specialist, a personal trainer for over 13 years, and a mom of 5. So welcome, and let's get started. This chapter is a quick one, but I did not want to add it with 3 or 5 because both of those are heavy chapters. So let's talk about Dr. Bradley a little bit. He was born in 1917 on a farm, if you can remember from the last chapters. And during his childhood, he really enjoyed watching the animals give birth so naturally. He was born at home, and he went into obstetrics to do labor and delivery. Now, at that time in the early 1900s, women went from laboring at home with their moms, their aunts, their grandmas, and other women and midwives in the community to laboring in a hospital. And in a hospital, they made it a sterile environment. It was cold and dark, and then bright fluorescent lights, and at home it was comfortable. Also in the hospital, they kicked fathers away and they put them out in the waiting room, and they're like, nope, you have nothing to do here. And basically whatever the doctor said is what happened. And so that is the field he was going into. So in 1947, he had already made a huge impact, and he was called by couples the father of fathers because he was the first doctor to advocate for fathers in the delivery room. So we're going to get into that, how he got to that idea, but I want to first note that this book is continued on by Marjorie J. and James Hathaway. Now, they have continued the subsequent editions for this book, and they have been carrying on that father of fathers legacy for Dr. Bradley since he first wrote this book. And they've been teaching classes and trainings for over 40 years, producing over 50 birth videos, and they have 6 children. So he has 6 children with his wife, Marjorie J. Hathaway. So yeah, super good that there is a couple that is continuing this legacy, because truly I've read this book multiple times and it is the best. Even though I give you a summary, I highly recommend, I skip over a lot, I highly recommend that you pick up a book for yourself and just enjoy every minute of it, and that is also going to be linked down below. So let's get into it. He was at the university, and during this time at the university, he never gave fathers a second thought because, like I said, delivery rooms were this sterile environment, and that was just what he was brought up with. But his first study, his first training was at a confinement home for pregnant women that were out of wedlock. So this was his first little experiment that he had with labor and delivery. And all of these women, they were really kind, they were really educated. None of them planned to keep their babies, and so they were delivering their babies without family members, without husbands or fathers there. And so they welcomed him with eagerness, and they gave him a chance to teach them about labor expectations, anatomy, the stages, and so on. And so they really adored him, they clung on, and these were women that were just ideal candidates for the voluntary experiment, they also, because of being educated, they never had the idea of taking medicine as a part of labor and delivery. So they were just perfect candidates for his first experiment. And all was well and good. Everything went really well with this group of women. And these were out of wedlocks again. And the other nurses or people in training said, okay, good for you that you had that great experience, but they're all out of wedlock, and so we know they're going to cooperate, but have you ever tried to have a married woman in the labor and delivery room with their husbands? Like, they're known for not cooperating, right? And so he was like, okay, well, let's move on to the next experiment. So they thought that out of wedlocks were so much better patients than married women. And they were just more cooperative, and they had a better interpersonal relationship with the doctors for the simple reason that it was actually an unflattering reason for Dr. Bradley, was because they didn't have anyone else whom to rely on. So of course they were cooperative. Of course they adored their doctor, versus if they were married, they had this ever-loving relationship with their husband, and the doctor was relatively unimportant. And I know that if you have delivered a baby, yeah, that's how it is. You're going to rely on your husband more for help in certain situations than you're going to call your doctor. Depending. It's depending now, because I know everybody has different situations in the hospital delivering their babies. So, he wanted to go ahead and do another experiment. And he asked for volunteers in a natural childbirth experiment with the world's, what they call, second to most impossible group of people. And these were married pregnant nurses. The first most impossible patients would have been married pregnant doctors. Well, according to them in this time, right? And during the time, he found a few married nurses that were willing to be patients. And the reason that they were somewhat going to be considered poor experimental subjects or poor risks is because they had a lot of emotional baggage. They simply knew too much about the birthing experience. They'd seen and heard about medicated maniacs, as Dr. Bradley put it, in labor, and they witnessed forceps being used, bruised babies, and everything negative in nature that has been seared into their subconscious minds. So that idea is that they're going to expect that to happen. But so he took the volunteers of the married RNs, and the ones that did volunteer, these ones actually were very cooperative, and it's because they had observed as assistants the color, muscle tone, immediate cry of a less healthy natural childbirth unmedicated baby in comparison to the limp blue baby of the medicated mother. The difference was so obvious that even today, there's a difference between epidural and unmedicated babies. So he trained indoctrinated married nurses, but they were way more cooperative than the out of wedlocks for this reason, because these women had seen the difference of medicated versus unmedicated births, which is really important. So these experimental mothers at the time had allowed the husbands in the labor room, but he pretty much ignored the husband, like, you're useless, right? He didn't believe in husbands at this time yet. He sat side by side by every experimental patient and throughout the course of labor. Now, he deliberately mistreated them, even though they were wonderful women, and then he would take note of what would happen to the labor experiment. He would then coach them to do the exact opposite of what he saw natural childbirth in animals do, and then he would take notes and evaluate. Now, he started to slowly awaken, though, to the importance of husbands. And this was because he noticed how much more calm and cooperative the patient was when her husband was present. When he left the room, even temporarily, the mother became anxious and tense and relaxed poorly with contractions. So, there's a lot in here that I'm skipping again, but so he had noticed this difference, and he goes on to explain stories and situations that he had noted. And there was one lady who was a rather beautiful lady, he explains, that was so gracious and so thankful for him as a doctor that she hugged him after delivery and kissed him on the cheek or something, kissed his hand, one of those. And he was kind of taken back, and he was like, why was I the subject for gratitude in coaching her labor while her husband sat useless outside the waiting room? And so here her husband is feeling anxious and uneasy, just waiting for this baby to be born. And here she is just giving all the love and praise to this doctor. The more he thought about this, he kind of started feeling a little bit ridiculous, because shouldn't the fathers be there? You know, why couldn't the role of the labor coach, why couldn't he take the role of the labor coach, which he had just performed and created? And that then the wife could give gratitude to her husband, right? And so he realized it was his ego that had constantly bolstered by pushing aside the husband and accepting substitute favors from his patients. So he actually started to feel embarrassed. So he then went on and he presented a program to the administrator and a trial of a new concept in obstetrics, where the husband would come into the labor and delivery room. And so he said, he talked to the insurance companies, and he basically put the coverage of the father, and pointing out that it just represented not just an additional person, but a substitute for the anesthesiologist and a new labor coach. And then we could provide him with a suit and a cap and a mask, and similar to the doctors. And so he was granted permission for this trial. What he found was that the father added an element of humor and joy and had become very much a meaningful member of the team. The German physicist Max Planck said that a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. So, and this was the start of husbands in the labor room. Now, in other places around the country, this was in California, a student at Humboldt State College in Arcata, California, he made newspaper headlines because he literally chained himself to the bed so that they could not kick him out of the hospital while his wife was in labor. And so he's like, I love my wife. I feel like it's my moral right as a husband and father to be there. This is the basic human right to share the childbirth with your wife. And I completely agree. So during the years, other young men had brought about legal action against the hospitals and bans in order to achieve the same purpose. Chains and injunctions are things of the past now, as hospital administrations are yielding to the demands of the young people to be able to share this important event with their lives. And I think it is so important. So moving on from that, how he brought the fathers in, which was obviously very successful. He said there are some instances of confusion when couples take this obedience childbirth class, and it's noted in the book. It's by American Foundation for Maternal and Child Health, and that's what it's called, obedience childbirth classes, which teach only to comply with the rules. It doesn't teach coaching or how to deliver properly or relax or anything that Dr. Bradley teaches. And what happens from this is the women end up with the medication and the fathers just simply observe. Now, I don't know about you, but I've heard so many stories where literally the husband was just an observer and the woman was getting the epidural and all the other medications, and he was just kind of there, just following the barking orders from the hospital staff. And that is what we want to get away from. We want the husband to be fully involved, and Dr. Bradley wants it, and I want it for you, because let me tell you, it's literally the best experience. I want to say sorry if you guys hear the kids in the background. We have an open floor plan house, and I swear no matter what room they go in, you can hear everything. So let's continue. Now, it is difficult for fathers unless fathers may find being with their wives in labor difficult unless the wife has been trained on how to perform labor and is physically prepared her giving birth muscles. Now, I must say that is somewhat true, because when you deliver, if you don't know what that feels like until you actually go into delivery. And those giving birth muscles really need to be trained in order to successfully deliver. I have heard of moms taking half an hour to an hour plus just to push a baby out. Now, there may have been other drugs and factors involved, but really, it's really important to get to know those muscles. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for natural childbirth and pre and postnatal, because it really is truly a joyful experience, but you need to train for it. Your body needs to be ready. Now, there are women that are they might not do fitness all the time, but they are ready to have babies. There are definitely those women out there. So 2, he will not have a hard time either if he has been prepared and understands how, why, and what his wife is doing, enabling him to coach and guide her and encouraging her. That is really important, because when she's doubting herself, if he's just there to rub her back or give her water, that can be all the encouragement she needs to keep pushing through. Dr. Bradley does get objections to the word husband, and a definition of a husband is someone who loves and protects the woman. It is someone she can depend on and relate to. Generally, it's the husband or the father of the child, but husbandry is actually a word, and that's what they teach at universities. When they breed cattle, the word doesn't have to mean married, but you can husband your resources. So husbandry is the act or involvement in such a capacity as to facilitate tremendous bonding and support. One does not have to be the biological father or a Y chromosome person to have this title. The role of the husband is the basis for what we teach and is what has made the Bradley method so successful. So some women don't realize that they are important to the process. So now, if it's not your husband, Dr. Bradley suggests in this book that it's someone that's going to be really, really close to you. So maybe your husband can't be there, maybe you'd want your mom, but he says it's got to be somebody really close to you that is going to have a role in your baby's life. That's what he would recommend for the husband role. And so a lot of men hesitate to be around births because they think it's just the women's work. So some don't realize they are a part of the important process, and they might be afraid to get in the way, and they don't know how they can help. And also they don't realize how significant they are. So I'm going to read through whose job is it that starts here, and it's another long page of what husbands have to do. So I'm going to read it not as whose job is it, I'm going to read it as he will. So he's going to go to the mother classes and learn what to expect in labor. He's going to encourage her to exercise during pregnancy. He's going to encourage her to eat well every single day, encourage her to help her in early labor. Call the doctor or the midwife when she's in labor. He's going to sign all the admitting forms and answer all the questions. Keep her relaxed. Remind her to slow her breathing and relax again after something disturbs her. He's going to recognize the natural alignment plateau in the acronym NAP. We'll get into that. He's going to spoon her ice chips when her mouth is dry. Wipe away the sweat on her brow. when she's working hard. He's going to rely on to keep watch and help to avoid unnecessary pain. He's going to tell her she's doing a great job over and over and over again. He's going to act as the advocate when decisions need to be made. He's going to know what relaxes her. He's going to rub her back. He will hold her up in the shower if she needs to be held up. He's going to sit with her in the bathroom when she wants to labor in there. He's going to find her a good pushing position. He's going to hold her up for a pushing position, even if it's hours, as long as it's necessary. He's going to remind her to push to the point of comfort. He's going to help her relax through contractions and between contractions. And he's going to tell her when he can see the head. He's going to share the special bonding. And he is going to be the one that the mother says that she could have never delivered the baby without him. Having a father in the delivery room is so important. And if you don't have a husband, of course, it can be someone super significant to your life. But I hope that you read this book, because I know that my husband was super significant for my deliveries, and I'm so thankful for that. And I want you to experience the same. So I hope you enjoyed chapter 4. I hope you follow along, and we will be doing chapter 5 next. As always, stay positive, work hard, and God bless. Mahalo for joining me. Aloha.